Hello, you're on Music Toolbox and welcome to another Free App Friday. Today we are looking at Red Hot plus Bach, a great new app that just came out this week from the Red Hot organization. Now, if you don't know the Red Hot organization, it's a non-profit international organization dedicated to fighting AIDS, and they fight AIDS through collaboration with pop culture figures. So let's go ahead and jump right in. There are three main sections to Red Hot and Bach. The first is play, the second is perform, and the last is discover. Let's go ahead and start with play. Now when I open play, I see a series of recordings. The playlist in white is a list of new recordings. These are pieces by Bach or inspired by Bach with new arrangements from people from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of genres, a variety of artistic directions. Let's listen to the Cello Suite Number 1 by Gary Bratz and Ron Carter. And I want to draw your attention while this is playing to the purple area here. This is a sound responsive palette, so as the music plays you'll start seeing different shapes show up, and you can interact with that palette by touching it. So let's go ahead and listen. And I'm going to go ahead and touch this and interact with it. And if I don't like that palette, I can pick another palette. So this is interesting, and I can draw shapes. So that's the first one. But along with these reimagined recordings, there are also old favorites. So here's the same Bach Cello Suite by Yo-Yo Ma. Has a nice fade in and fade out. Oops, let's go back to there. So here is our area. Draw shapes. That's kind of nice. A little bass clef. So really, beyond giving yourself something to do while you're listening to these new recordings, I'm not really entirely sure what play does, but it's a whole lot of fun to play with. So let's go ahead and move from play to perform. And if you notice, play is still going on in the background, so you can see the colors and shapes. But let's move on to perform. And we're going to look at the Passacaglia. This is a version by Amina. And you know, with the Passacaglia, you're going to have a lot of repetitions, and you're going to want them for this section of the app, the perform section. When you hit a track and perform, you're given a circle, and this is a complicated graphic equalizer, and every element of this track that's been created can be softened and turned off. So when they're all the way in, they're all the way off, and I can take individual strands of the music and open them up. So there's our ground bass. So if we just, let's see, it's a little tricky to play with this, but if you just get the ground bass there, you can say, well, this is the monophonic texture, and we're going to add some polyphonic voices over top of it. And each one of these balls will add an element to the composition. So you can talk about texture, you can talk about line, you can talk about arrangement. There's all sorts of possibilities here, and I believe the strings recorded here are the Kronos Quartet. And if you let this sit long enough, it'll come up with a new version. So here it's going to rejigger like planets moving in different orbits, and you'll hear a different sound world with the same composition, and it'll move again, and you'll get a different look at the same. This is, of course, a Passacaglia, so that seems appropriate. I kind of, in my heart of hearts, wish that this movement would happen not so much randomly, but with the different variations of the Passacaglia. But it's still a lot of fun. So this is Perform. So let's go on to the Discover section. And notice our pretty colors are still flying around in the background. Part of me actually wishes that I could stop that. More easily in the interface. But there are a number of things here in the Discover section. First of all, there is a link to the full album, Red Hot and Bach. So if you're liking the recordings you were hearing, you should go to iTunes and go ahead and pick up this recording, and the profits from this album will go to supporting the Red Hot's mission fighting AIDS throughout the world. So, what else is in the Discover section? Well, first of all, there's this darling little illustration of the life of Bach, and it's really the funniest thing I've seen in a long time, but it's awful fast, and luckily you can pause it and scroll through it and find the things you're interested in, and it's really full of information. Like Bach was the youngest child of 8, Bach's dad died, he was an orphan, his older brother took him in, a series of jobs that he had trouble with. Here's the famous walk to see Buxtehude, his first marriage, his second marriage, all the kids who died, his brief time in jail, and his death after a botched eye surgery, the same lovely surgeon who blinded Handel, blinded Bach. So that's just a lot of fun. I really want it in a poster or in some sort of windy toy that I can wind and watch it slowly. But that's something fun to grab and maybe show to your students. So we also have a video of the Kronos Quartet recording one of Bach's Art of Fugues, one of Bach's fugues from that collection, and they're recording it at the Edison Museum studio. So this is actually a remarkably interesting recording because they record it in 4 different formats at the same time. They record it on an old wax cylinder, and if you watch the video carefully, you can actually see the technician blowing the wax off so it doesn't disrupt the recording. They record it onto 78 discs. And the tuning is really remarkable too. I mean, the flat-out performance is pretty amazing. They also record it on analog tape and on digital. So what you're hearing here is digital, but if I want to, I can switch on the fly over to analog or to wax cylinder. And to 78. And the 78 actually I kind of like. So you can switch back and forth, and if you were teaching a class in recording techniques, well, this would be super, because then you could talk about the different media, the different ways they recorded. You can see that big horn there recording onto the wax cylinder, and the poor technician with the little eyedropper blowing everything off. You can notice the other sound funnels for the record. So this is kind of a remarkable almost archive of recording history here. So this is definitely something you want to bring out and talk about with your students. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is a short bio on the life of Paul Jacobs. Paul Jacob was one of the best known and most loved artists in New York at that time and worked with many of the luminaries of that era, such as Copland and Bernstein. He was also one of the first people to die from AIDS in the 80s before AIDS even had a name. So that brings us back to the mission of Red Hot. If you've enjoyed this app, whether it's the music or the presentation, please go to redhot.org and consider making a donation. Thanks a lot.